you look at the warehouse in the supply chain of a retailer, then you see that it's basically surrounded by transportation. So we see that the inbound transportation flows basically feed the products into the warehouse, and we see that the outbound takes the products from the warehouse and delivers them to the customer. That makes it a very special situation, because basically you have inflowing goods and outflowing goods, and you have a storage entity in between, which creates a buffer, therefore making sure that you always have the right products available in order to feed to your customers. That is also difficult, because that means that it's basically fully integrated. It's very dependent on the inbound flow, and it's very dependent on the outbound flow. And it makes it extremely interesting, because it matches, or it creates this conflict between transportation needs and the needs of the warehouse management system, really where these two systems meet. And therefore it's also a very complex puzzle in itself. However, if you look at how retailers generally deal with it, then it's completely isolated. And the reason for that is very simple, because it's too complex. Every puzzle itself, inbound, warehouse, and outbound, are very complex in itself, and therefore making it basically impossible to integrate these into one. Integrating the warehouse and the transportation is very beneficial and can add a lot of value to your operations. If we look at examples, for example, let's say we look at zoom in into the outbound flow, and we say we would do everything that the outbound flow wants in order to reach the best optimal result in the outbound transportation. Generally, we see that results in a peak of the trucks leaving the warehouse at the same time. There's a simple reason for that. Usually you have your profiles of delivering, for example, to the stores. You see that they have a specific peak at a specific time. For example, take a food retailer where generally the fresh products are delivered in the morning. You don't want your fresh products to be delivered in the evening. And actually that creates a lot of peak of trucks that need to leave the warehouse at the same time. However, it's optimal for the transportation planning, and therefore you minimize the cost. What that means on the other side for the warehouse is actually to have a peak in picking capacity that is needed. So you need a lot of people at the same amount of time in order to make sure that you can deliver the right amount of products to the transportation, therefore increasing the cost of the warehouse. If we switch that around, then we have a similar problem. If you optimize for the warehouse, you will have a very flat picking speed, therefore generating a low cost on the labor side, because you don't have any peaks in there. However, that would require the transportation to actually deliver a lot of trucks, because you need to deliver a lot of products in this short period of time, and you can only do that with a lot of trucks simultaneously. In both cases, you optimize one part of the supply chain, but you don't optimize the global picture, because the supply chain itself, your bottom line, is affected by this. And therefore, of course, it would benefit from the fact if you could look at these two things at the same level, if you could look at them at the same time, and therefore generate an optimal plan for you, and not necessarily for the two elements of the supply chain. Starting this puzzle is very difficult, because of course it's a very big change to go from a silo planning to an integrated planning. And therefore it's important to take also smaller steps. This in the end is a vision that you want to reach in many years. You don't necessarily need to reach it just like this. And therefore it's important that you find intermediate steps. One intermediate step that we have seen very, very beneficial for a customer is actually that you go and put the two planning departments on the same floor. Easy as that they start talking to each other and suddenly notice the pain of the other with certain actions, and you can start have a communication. But of course that can be supported also by tools. So if you go into a system and you actually allow on technical planning to create the capacity requirements for the transportation plan, you feed that information to the warehouse, let them actually deal with the factors that you have in your technical plan, so you already have the certain profiles that they need to deal with. They can minimize their cost. That can be considered in the operational planning of the transport planning, therefore allowing these two to suddenly start talking to each other without being a fully integrated system, and therefore also minor changes only in your organization and in your process. Both of these steps already deliver a lot of value for you without actually losing the picture of the long-term vision, because that's in the end what you want to strive for in order to increase the impact on your bottom line and have the best outcome for you.